Welcome to the Media Line celebration of International Women's Day and to an extraordinary lineup of courageous women who are not only impacting their societies, but making a global mark and creating a difference for other women as they climb ladders and shatter ceilings. Women have made enormous strides since 1920 when they were able to vote in the United States, and here in the Middle East, as we take a closer look at 2021, we see Saudi Arabia opening closed doors so that women are integrated into the workforce. Although serious human rights issues remain, we see signs such as all-women television channels emerging, and yet women in the Middle East still trail men by a huge gap in politics and business. Today, we travel to various parts of the Middle East that we cover, from Pakistan to Yemen, the Palestinian Territories to Israel, and Bahrain. Then we visit Houston to meet a participant of the Media Line's Press and Policy Student Program. You're going to learn why women are being noticed now more than ever. We begin with Ruth Wasserman Landy, a newly appointed member of the Israeli parliament who served in Israel's foreign ministry for over a decade and was an advisor to President Shimon Peres. South African born, she's mother of 3. And Ruth, we're going to begin now with you. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, and it's also morning in many places that are here today. And you're very busy with the 4th election, but I'm glad you took this time. I remember distinctly covering your story in Lud, and it was quite fascinating. You lived there many years. It's one of Israel's poorest cities. What's the achievement that you're most proud of?
Are you asking particularly about Lud or in general?
In Lud in particular.
In Lud. So just for those who don't know, first of all, good evening, everyone. And it is a huge honor to be with you, with the wonderful ladies. I received a little bit of background about most of you, and it's a tremendous honor. So thank you, Felice, for bringing this tremendous gathering. It was not easy. Lod is, as Felice has mentioned, a very poor Jewish Arab mixed city in the center of Israel, very near the airport. In fact, all the aliyot, all the immigrant circles that came to Israel, in fact, there were almost all of them came to Lod in the beginning. So there was a circle after circle of immigrants who were on the socioeconomic level, on the lower end of the socioeconomic ladder. And my husband and I, with our 3 children, decided that we were going to live there and give our time to try and really develop and encourage empowerment, not only of women, but of youth, sustainable sources of income, their creation, and generally to bring people to know what is the value of this tremendous city, because few people know that it is in fact the oldest city in Israel, older than Jerusalem, older than Jaffa. It is 8,000 years old, and not only is it that old, but it is one of the icons of the Christian Orthodox world. In fact, St. George, who slayed the dragon, is buried, he's said to be buried in the old city in Lod, and there's a beautiful church created over that burial place, very, very close to a mosque, a Mamluk mosque from the 12th century, if I'm not mistaken, and that is right next to a Georgian Jewish synagogue. So we call it the Triangle of Peace. And I think my greatest achievement, to answer your question, is that I exposed the beauty, the complexity, and I would say the intricacy of this tremendous city with its mosaic of cultures within it. We called it the microcosm of the bigger Israel to the general public in our country, and to a degree abroad as well, because we brought many ambassadors and many visitors from abroad. So I would say that was my greatest achievement with that regard.
Where is Israel in terms of the female population in politics and in business? Where do they stand and where do they need to go?
Okay. So it's interesting because this morning I had a wonderful conversation with quite an astounding array of ladies from Dubai, from Abu Dhabi, from different places in the UAE. And we spoke about the fact that the Emirati parliament has 50% women, also ministers, etc. The Israeli parliament has a little bit of a way to go with 25%. Of course, we are at a place where, as you know, I'm a member of Knesset. I have my colleagues. There are, of course, ministers, but we do have a way to go with equality still in terms of wages and positions, not only in politics, but in business as well. And I'm saying that despite the fact that there are absolutely amazing, astounding, and very impactful women in key positions in Israel, of course.
Why do you think that is?
Well, you know, women are just like everybody else. I don't see a big difference in the capabilities. You know, we have women in the IDF. Today, there is a public discourse about the fact that girls can go, you know, the military service is obligatory in Israel. And girls are fighting to be able to choose to go to combat units without any differentiation. Quite frankly, it's not an easy task. I salute them and I wish them, gosh, all the luck possible. But yes, they fight for the possibility to choose to be in those combat units. And there's a discourse for a number of reasons. So I think they're capable. The fact that they're capable is there's no arguing that a woman can do everything and anything. In fact, the COVID-19 pandemic worldwide has shown that women leaders of countries have made a huge difference. And there is a certain kind, it's not that we don't have egos, we all have our egos, but there is a kind of a sensitivity that women have that brings an added value to any conflict, which is something that needs to be taken into account. And I feel that there is always something to add to a very, let's say, men-oriented Middle East in that regard.
You advised Shimon Peres when he was the president of Israel. He understood the importance of including women in the political system. What would he say about the status of women on the eve of the elections?
You know, Shimon Peres was a visionary, and he always thought about 20 years forward, if not more. In fact, he spoke of nanotechnology when it was a really strange, bizarre idea that nobody even understood. He spoke about the new Middle East before anybody dreamt of peace with the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, and so on. He really was a visionary, and if you wish, a dreamer. And he used to tell us at 11 o'clock at night to do something he just couldn't figure out why 5 a.m. it wasn't done already. That was President Shimon Peres, may he rest in peace. And he would say that there's a way to go. You know, he always used to say, and I remember this, that the most important thing are the mothers, because if a mother is uneducated and brings a huge number of children to this world, he wasn't talking about those who want to bring many children to the world, but those who were in circumstances that were made to really not study and not be educated, and especially about the polygamy in many societies. He said, what would be the future of our children? There's no energy left in the woman to give, to teach, to nurture each and every child as if they were the entire world, as it should be. And he used to say this all the time. And, you know, he didn't only say that. He was the kind of person who really, that's the way he lived. He was surrounded by women in a good sense. His whole bureau was almost completely female-oriented, and he believed in the power of women, in us.
Ruth, fourth elections. What does the next Israeli parliament need to tackle in terms of the inclusion of women? And I'm sure you are. I think anybody covering it or watching fourth elections are feeling that way. But women's issues are problematic still in terms of what?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that today there is a huge awakening to the fact that political parties without women in the front line are passé. So there is a trend of the political leaders to make an attempt. They don't all succeed, to put it gently. I'm not talking about the ultra-Orthodox parties only. There are others too that don't have women. And yet, even the Islamic movement party, Ra'am, put a woman MK in its list. Not to mention, of course, the other Arab parties and other Jewish Zionist parties. Again, I don't mention the ultra-Orthodox because they don't have women candidates, but there is still a long way to go. Today, Pnina Tamano-Shata, the first Ethiopian Minister of Immigration from my party, from the Blue and White Party, actually was quoted saying that 50% of the ministers in the next government must be women. And I'm all for it.
You worked for the Foreign Ministry of Israel and you were stationed in Egypt. What was it like and how did you fare as a woman and let alone a diplomat? That's not an easy task.
You know, I spent 3 years in Egypt, 3 whole years before I was married. Of course, as you can see, I don't look very Egyptian. Couldn't get that out. Couldn't mask that in any way. And I was an Israeli Jewish Ashkenazi woman. And not only that, I was the representative of all evil because I was a diplomat of the Israeli embassy. And of course, the Egyptians were completely convinced that I was not only a representative, but the epitome of all conspiracy theories and muamara, for those who speak Arabic. So it was quite surreal, I must say. You know, every time as I said, it was before I was married. So every time an Egyptian guy came anywhere near me, and I didn't want him near me, all I needed to say was "Ana min Israel," and it would disappear in absolutely no time. Because they were afraid that the mukhabarat would see, or the God forbid somebody from around would see them speaking or breathing next to an Israeli. That was the essence of lack of normalization. In fact, I came there, Felice, when it was the height of the second Intifada, and it was very, very difficult. Mubarak, the former former president, said that there would be no relations or any kind of interactions with Israelis apart from those that are strategically and security oriented net. That's it. And really, there was no connection. We would call every ministry. I'm not even talking about other people, and they would just make up every excuse on the face of the planet not to meet with us. Very, very, very difficult. That time has passed. Arafat passed away. We signed the QAZ agreement, Qualified Industrial Zone Agreement, whereby Egypt, Israel, and the United States, in fact, signed an agreement, and goods manufactured in Egypt would have a certain input of goods from Israel being sent without custom taxes to the US, which was supposed to bring us together with the Egyptians in 2005. And many steps were taken to sort of break the ice. And it did get better. But the better, when one sees the relationship currently between Israel and the UAE, is a very, very, very long way from a warm peace. And it was a very challenging 3 years, very teaching 3 years, eye-opening, in fact. And I can say today that it was one of the most important things that I did in my entire professional life. In fact, I'm writing a book about it. It's a novel, and it's going to be called Unveiled in Cairo. So hopefully, when it's ready,
you'll come back.
Yes, yes. But it
It's
was an astounding experience.
International Women's Day. What are your personal hopes, and what do you hope for women of the world?
Okay, so for women in the world, it's a very big question. So, with your permission, I will say what is my hope, my dream, and my request. And in fact, I don't only say this to you. I said this today from the plenary in the Knesset. Loud and clear, it will be a post in English, Arabic, and Hebrew in my social media as well. I said the following: the discourse in this country needs to be more respectful, needs to be more gentle. Genteel is not a weakness. One can achieve tremendous objectives. The sky is the limit with a soft voice, with softness. Being a woman is not a barrier in any way. And especially on the International Women's Day, I called on my fellow members of Knesset, the ministers, and the general society in my country, both Arab and Jewish, to be more gentle with one another, to treat one another with respect and an open heart. And I don't only say this, I live this, I smell this, I breathe this, I believe in this. Inshallah, and please God, this is something that I wish for very much.
Ruth Wasserman Landy, thank you so much for taking the time. I hope you'll stay with us throughout, but I understand if you have to leave, I do understand how difficult it is.
No, I'm
but
looking forward.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Felice.
Dr. Areej Khatib. Less known are women who are making a difference, and in particular in the Palestinian Authority. And I want to go to Dr. Areej now. This is a woman who was an assistant professor of pathology in Bethlehem University. I followed her over the last few years, and we're going to go to a video in a few moments. She was born in Nablus and a fascinating woman in her own right. Dr. Khatib, welcome to...
Thank you, Felice. It's a pleasure to be with you here.
When I last met you in Ramallah, you were running a clinic and looking at trials of the entire body. What has been accomplished since then? What did you find?
We were starting to look on the Palestinian genetic profile. And it was an interesting journey because during the last year, we found out a lot of genetic variants that are very peculiar for the Palestinians. And we are now working on this with my students in the master program of Bethlehem University and with local companies, pharmaceutical companies, as we have a peculiar variant for vitamin D, for example, in the Palestinian population. But what amazed me is the prevalence that we have these variants in the Palestinians. It reaches about 95%, which is a huge number. It's a big number. But my theory, which I think is right, is that we always marry the same ethnicity.
You left Ramallah to complete a master's degree in Canada in management. Well, you're a physician. Why do you need it? And are you still completing it?
So I'm studying international management in health leadership. If I could study to be a real leader, I think I might be able to change something.
Palestinian women are highly educated, but how do they fare in the sciences?
The scientists in Palestine are not very lucky. The system, the leadership, the atmosphere does not really give you the motivation and the means to do what you know very well to do. No financing, the administrations do not care, and this is why we made a very promising chapter in Palestine now. So me and my colleagues, female scientists from different universities in Palestine, started something called Palestinian Chapter OWSD, Palestinian Chapter, it's Organization of Women in Science for the Developing Country. We are now nearly 100 member women scientists in this chapter.
How did your time at Hadassah Medical Center help to shape your career? You were working with Israelis, with Palestinians, Israeli Arabs, and others. What impact did it have on your career?
The science in this hospital is truly up to one of the best international levels, and there's something else. They don't care who you are. This is my experience, at least. They don't care if you are Palestinians, if you are Muslim, if you are Christian, it doesn't matter. In this institution, they care if you are good, if you want to learn, and they gave you the opportunity. And this taught me how to be so professional in thinking and not to judge anybody according to any ethnic or religious background.
So why is it that the politics always pushes everything back?
Yeah, that's the question that every scientist, every doctor, and every professional ask. If we could do well in research with the Israelis or with the Europeans or with the Americans or with whomever, and if we can work together as residents, as specialists, as healthcare team, why we could not live together? I don't know. I think both sides need to answer this question.
International Women's Day is upon us. It's a time to reflect. And what would you say to other young scientists that are trying to rise up in this field?
I would like to say to them, free your minds. Free your minds from the barriers. There is no barrier because you are a woman.
What is the hardest thing you ever did?
My first job was a director of a unit. And though I left that hospital with so much love and so much trust from my team, but the start was not easy. Like having 30 men in the unit with a young female as a director, believe me, that was not easy.
Dr. Areej Khatib, it was a pleasure learning your story and hopefully inspiring others. Thank you so much for joining me. The World Bank released the Women Business and Law Study, and it just came out. It revealed that 9 out of 10 of the 190 economies studied are Middle Eastern countries that fared poorly, the first being Palestinian Territories, followed by Yemen and Kuwait. There is much needed in the region. Next, we visit an outstanding and one of the bravest women I know, a woman I'm proud to call my friend. As a young woman, Nadia Al-Sakkaf has gone where many would dare not go. Born and raised in Yemen, Nadia was editor-in-chief of the Yemen Times and later served as Minister of Information in the internationally recognized government of President Hadi. Just recently, she completed her PhD in politics, researching the politics of gender in Yemen. Welcome, Nadia Al-Sakkaf. We truly appreciate your joining us on this very special day, International Women's Day, and your birthday.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, Nadia, it's wonderful to have you joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Nice to see you're safe and sound and not in Yemen.
Well, one day I'll go back, but maybe not soon. I don't know.
Yemen is in turmoil in the midst of a civil war. Looking back to the days when you wrote a book, you personally handed it out to gain the female vote in Yemen. Come current, has the war impeded women's empowerment?
Definitely. I mean, obviously any kind of conflict impedes any kind of development, whether it is for women or men. But women bear the hardest burden, as we all know, not only because they are the ones who are taking over as the men engaged in conflict, because they're taking care of traditional and untraditional roles. They are forced into labor in the market in very unsafe situations, and they are also victims of violence. Lots of men who come back from the battlefront start to become abusive, and we know that this is a part of post-trauma disorders. women are also unprivileged in the sense of politics. So it's not just about the basic rights of education or healthcare or even barely surviving. It's also the achievements that we had in the recent years in 2013 with the 30% quota of women in all positions of power. We've lost that completely because of the coup.
The social fabric of Yemen has changed. The image of women in Yemen is one of a closed, conservative, and oppressed society. And yet, we just covered a story highlighting a TEDx event in Yemen. What do you want the world to know about Yemen?
Well, I'll say what I said in my TED talk. I wish the world would see Yemen through my eyes. There's so much that we can offer the world, our men and our women. We are professional, educated, highly motivated individuals and to the community. But the problem is that, as you said, the social fabric, the larger scale is such one that does not encourage ambition. It does not encourage freedoms. And so we land up going backwards. For example, this TED talk that you talked about, the women who participated in it had to go through so much. They actually had to sign papers saying that they are not going to talk about anything that would be perceived as scandalous. Their dialogues had to be surveillance or surveyed before they spoke. So there was a lot of censorship in that. I wish the world would give Yemen a chance through its youth scholarships, the programs such as the ones provided by the Media Line as an example. It's amazing how much education and exposure can do.
Our relationship goes back quite a bit to the time when you were printing the Media Line stories in the Yemen Times. Can you share your story of how you became the editor of a major newspaper in Yemen?
It's a story of chance, actually. I was born, the newspaper is actually my dad's, and he passed away because he was assassinated by the former regime. He was a brave man, and he taught us to be brave. And so I found myself as the editor-in-chief of a media, the first and largest English newspaper in the country, and everybody was betting against me. Even my own employees were thinking, well, you're a woman, you're a young woman, how can you do something like that? And to be honest, I had to prove to them and to myself and to the whole world that I could do it. And I did. In 1 year, I won 2 international awards, and I managed to improve the level of the organization. And I hired a lot of females. I thought strength is in power. I'm going to change the internal dynamics of this because I could, so I did.
There are few women in the Middle East, and particularly in Middle East nations, holding higher positions of power. What was it like to be the first female Minister of Information in a region which does not have many women in power?
I have to tell you the truth. It was a nightmare, to be honest. I mean, the position was such a privileged one because, you know, I was the role model. I was setting a record. But within few months, there was a coup d'etat, and I had armed men with guns in my office, threatening my life, threatening my authority. I had to fight. I actually literally had to flee the country with my little children so that I survived. The thing is, when the Houthis took over the media institutions, I had to resort to my personal Twitter account to tell the world what was going on. And that was an experience like no other. I think maybe we'll do a movie about it or something.
Can you take a minute to share? I mean, I know it. I don't know how much you can share, but it was an amazing escape.
The truth is that we were surrounded. All of the people who worked in the government were surrounded. Some of us were actually detained. Others were they were under house arrest. And what I would be chased, even if I go out of the house, I would find a car following me, a person following me. I tried to even veil. I wore a veil, and they would say, "Good morning, Nadia Al-Sakhaf. You know it's you." And I was like, "Can nobody get a break?" And then I started getting threats. It was on the phone, and it was people in person, especially that I was trying to get the state back to help the president come back. And the thing is, at a certain point,
you know your life is at risk. And I had my little two children and I needed a way out. And I used my contacts with the UN, and I had to disguise myself as a member. And I went in a flight, in a chartered flight to Ethiopia, and from Ethiopia to Cairo, and from Cairo to Jordan. It was very surreal. I am very grateful for all the people who helped me get out. And one day I will be back.
Should the United States have taken the Houthis off the terrorist list?
That's the million-dollar question. Now, it seems to me as a Yemeni that the decision to put the Houthis at that time and to take Houthis just a few days after they have put it is very haphazard. It's hypothetical. It seems like there is no system. I mean, you either are a terrorist or you're not. You can't be in a few days. You can't change who you are. And the reasons they have given for humanitarian access and all of that, they could have been. There were ways to sort them out. The problem with this is that if they do take the Houthis, if they do deal with the Houthis as non-terrorists, then what is the motivation for them to actually come to peace? I mean, why would they actually surrender their weapons and say, okay, fine, because they are now fighting in Marib as we speak. And it's kind of encouraging them to take without any consequences. They've been taken off the list. It's like not even a slap on the wrist. You're fine. Go continue the war. I'm actually angry.
What do you feel was your greatest accomplishment? I mean, you've done a lot for young women. I said it's your birthday, which happy birthday. But what do you feel? What do you feel is your greatest accomplishment as a woman?
I think, as many of the women around here, I mean, love to all of you. I think what we do is that we bring hope. We are role models. We tell them that they can aspire, they can achieve, and we mentor. This is one thing that also through the course of the media line, mentor, hold hands, tell them how to do it. Because enough with the men's club, we have to have the women's club. We have to have the women's networks, and we have to work together to get the place that we deserve, because we do deserve. I believe that this is the decade for women in power. I am coining this as the decade of women in power. I believe that it's time for us, and only us, with the help of the others, but we can get things done.
Nadia, before we move on, I just want to take a moment. There's a painting behind you, and I'd asked you about that when we were talking. Can you describe it?
Yes. You can see this is a painting that shows a pencil. And now, as a journalist myself, the pencil is symbolic of your words, your ability to write and convey the message.
You need to move it.
Yesterday.
If you could move, Nadia,
today,
move a little bit so they can see it. If you could just inch. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So it's mirrored the screen, but this says yesterday, and this says today, and this says tomorrow. So as a person, you could be broken. And even if you're broken, that doesn't mean it's the end of it, because tomorrow you can become like sharp again. And in fact, there will be two of you, and we will continue our battle.
Nadia, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, and stay on. I'm sure people will have questions for you. Amazing, extraordinary women, and I hope everybody realizes the strength of these women. I am proud to share an interview with Her Excellency Dr. Shaikha Rana bint Isa Al-Khalifa, the Undersecretary of Bahrain's Foreign Ministry, who has held the position since 2017. In 2019, King Hamad also appointed her as part of the Supreme Council for Women. She has a PhD in international law from the University of Exeter, and she has masters in peace and conflict resolution from the American University in Washington, along with a degree in international relations. Please, everyone, watch along with me.
Thank you so much. The pleasure is all mine. So happy to be here with you today.
This is an exciting time to be Bahrain's first female Undersecretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. What exactly is your role?
Well, as often as I remind myself, my appointment as Undersecretary, while at the same time being the first ever female Arab Undersecretary of a regional Ministry of Foreign Affairs, is the highest honor I have received throughout my professional career and in my personal life. And I owe it to, of course, His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al-Khalifa for gracing me with this opportunity to serve my country at this capacity. So as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Under Secretary, I'm in charge with handling all matters related to the ministry's day-to-day administration, fiscal management, employment, human resources related issues, and of course, consular affairs. And on top of juggling these more administrative tasks, my profession also naturally includes a political dimension to it. So I'm also the deputy head of the National Committee to Combat Trafficking in Persons.
Many Middle Eastern countries are struggling with women's roles, particularly gains in the political arena. You are a member of the Supreme Council for Women, which is headed by Her Royal Highness Princess Hadiqa bint Ibrahim Al-Khalifa, wife of His Majesty King Hamad. Empowerment of women is not new to you, as one of the kingdom's mandates is to guarantee women's rights alongside men. Are you content with the realities on the ground?
Yes, indeed, I am. It is true that you can always improve on perfection. Even though we are not nearly there, we can safely say that as far as regional standards go, the situation surrounding women's rights in Bahrain is rather excellent. The Supreme Council for Women was established on the 22nd of August in 2001, meaning that this year is going to mark the 20 years since an official machinery was established in the country to oversee and promote all matters pertaining to women's rights. But that is not the start of the story. Through Bahraini women were granted political suffrage in 2002, they have been also able to participate in municipal elections as far back as the 1930s. Bahraini women have legally been able to also own businesses since the 1960s. We have had women serve in both chambers of our national parliament, and Bahraini women have been serving as ambassadors to their countries since the 1990s. And the first ever female to hold a cabinet position in the government was appointed in 2004. And in 2006, Bahrain made history with the appointment of the third ever female woman and first Arab to hold the presidency of the United Nations General Assembly.
What would you say is the nation's biggest foreign relations triumph?
I would have to say that the Abraham Accords and achieving and maintaining Tier 1 status, the United States State Department's annual Trafficking in Persons report, are a tie for the #1 spot. This is because, with regards to the Abraham Accords, the normalizations of relations between the Kingdom of Bahrain and the State of Israel marks a milestone for the Middle East's almost perennial pursuit of regional peace. And as for the issue of the State Department's Tier 1 classification, it is also undoubtedly a major success for the kingdom because it stands as a testament to the achievements of not only our labor market reform efforts, but also if we are able to look at things more holistically.
Bahrain hosted the Peace to Prosperity Peace Conference, which preceded the Abraham Accords. You must feel a sense of accomplishment seeing the 4 subsequent normalizations with Israel. What can you share?
It gives me great pleasure to see that barely a year after we held the Peace to Prosperity workshop, that our efforts would bear fruit. And if you and your audience would humor me for just a brief moment, I honestly don't think this historic milestone in regional peace would have been realized this soon without the conference. So I look forward to seeing more of our brotherly neighbors in the region and beyond that take the same step. I look forward to working with my Israeli colleagues, as I am sure that this is only just the start of what is going to be a productive relationship, not only for our two nations, but for the region as a whole.
International Women's Day is upon us, and on a sad note, trafficking of both women and men still exists today. What measures have you promoted in Bahrain against this, and what do you advocate globally that should be done?
So as deputy head of the National Committee to Combat Trafficking in Persons, I am proud to once again reiterate that the Kingdom of Bahrain, for the third year in a row, has been awarded the Tier 1 status in the United States State Department's annual Trafficking in Persons report, a milestone no other country in the region has yet achieved, and a testament to the progress we have made in our efforts to better reform and regulate our domestic labor market. So as for the rest of the world, I encourage those in the region and beyond not only to look at Bahrain's example when combating modern day slavery, but also to really take this matter to heart.
What advice would you offer to a young person, and in particular women, as it is Women's International Day, seeking to enter politics?
Well, to all youth out there, but especially to women, I have one key piece of advice to offer them: to be confident, to be brave, and above all, to have patience. The world of politics is an exciting, but also a very demanding one. There will be days when you might feel compelled to quit or move on because the oftentimes depressing and heartbreaking developments we are accustomed to seeing on TV. But know this: you are here to make the world a better place, and it's not always, butterflies and rainbows.
Her Excellency Dr. Shaikha Rana bint Isa Al-Khalifa, thank you so much for joining me today. It was an honor. That was indeed an honor to have her on with us, Shaikha Rana, and it was her first interview outside of Bahrain. Child brides at the age of 7 and older, we cannot even imagine that. But in the Swat Valley in Pakistan, the barbaric tribal code still exists, and one unusual, brave, outspoken woman has said enough. She created an organization, Girls United for Human Rights. Let's meet Hadika Bashir. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. Why did you decide to take on child marriage?
When I was 7-year-old, so one of my friends told me that she's getting married, and all of us were very excited for her marriage. And, we were excited for the marriage dress and, for the jewelries and everything. So we don't know that she's getting married, and we don't know the circumstances. We don't know that what will happen. Her mother-in-law scolded us and told us that now she is woman and she will not play with you. So after some time we arranged. She came to the school, but she was very pale and down. So I asked from her that what happened. So she told us that her husband beat her with an iron wire. I was in shock on that time, that what is happening. But unfortunately, I was not able to do anything for her. So when I turned 11, a marriage proposal came for me. The man was a taxi driver. They were about to say yes for that proposal, but I was crying, and I was crying to my father that no, I don't want to get married in this age, because I have some dreams. I want to continue my study. So my father told me about the human rights and about the the child marriage law. So I bravely told to my grandmother that if you got me married in this age, I will file a case on you in the court of law.
Hadika, how old were you when you started Girls for Human Rights?
When I started Girls United for Human Rights, I was 13 years old.
Wow. And did you get other young women to join you?
On the starting time, I was only one who when I went to door and aware families, and then I make group. Then I make after 4-5 months, I make a group. And also we we also aware, we take sessions with the imams, the prayer leaders, so that they can talk about in the Friday sermons about the negative impact of early and forced marriages and about women rights.
Is the government doing anything?
They don't hear youth problems.
Do you know what the statistics are of child marriages today?
Yes, I know, according to a research back to 2018, it was 62% girls get married before the age of 16.
But in your spare time, you're going to college. And what are you studying?
So I'm doing sociology.
Are you under threat?
Yes, I have got threats from, so many times from the community, I stopped my work for some time and then I started my work but I didn't give up. And then I started my work again.
You've been given several awards and you also were nominated for the Child Peace Prize as well twice.
This is my voice that reached to the whole world, and people hear that, yes, these things are happening in Swat and, in the other cities and, in the other countries also.
Who is your role model?
My father. He is activist, he's feminist, he's always supporting women.
What is your wish for International Women's Day?
Is that all girls are getting, education, and all girls and women are empowered, and they have, their rights like men have. And my messages for all the women is that one human being with conviction can bring the real change.
What are your dreams for yourself, looking into the future?
My dream is not for myself, but my dream is to see the society where there is a peace, where women and girls are getting their education, and they, instead of getting married in the early and forced marriages, and they are more empowered.
Hadika Bashir, you are an inspiration and quite a pleasure to speak with you. I wish you a lot of success, that you are able to help eradicate child marriage.
Thank you.
Many thanks. Many thanks. What a remarkable woman, and what a tough job she has ahead. And she's located in the Swat Valley in Pakistan. I really think she needs all the help she can get. The need to empower young women leaders has never been more vital. The Media Line has set an example through its Press and Policy student program, which is training young journalism and political science students for their career paths ahead. Carla Warren is a participant in the program and joins us live from Houston. She's there in Texas, and she's a student at the University of Houston. Happy to have you here, Carla.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
I'm so happy to be here today. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Briefly, and let's kind of do a quick spin of some of the stories, maybe pick two that you wrote, and tell us about why they were important and what you learned from them in the Press and Policy student program.
Right. So two stories that were very important to me in the Press and Policy program. First, there was a story that I did that was about a possible two-state solution between Israel and the Palestinian people. That was very important to me because it allowed me the opportunity to broaden my global perspective, not just as a journalist, but as a person. A lot of times in the U.S., we're taught things from a perspective just of an American perspective without seeing a broader view. And so coming into the Press and Policy program, I gradually was able to just expand my views and expand my knowledge on the situation. It was a great opportunity for me. Also, another story that I was able to learn from was when I wrote about Texas Senator Ted Cruz and a proposal he had for the U.S. to collaborate with Israel with medical technology and things of that nature. And even in my own state of Texas, we're very reliant on Israeli technology for things like water and cybersecurity and all of those wonderful things that we benefit from. And so through the Press and Policy program, I've been able to develop as a young journalist. I've been able to learn about just expansion, contacts, sources, who I need to speak with, how to ask questions, what questions questions to ask. All of those things are very important. And the Press and Policy program has given me the chance to build upon that platform and develop myself. And so now I feel more confident in my role as a young journalist. I want to be able to tell the stories that matter, ask the questions that matter, and just really benefit the world through the tools that I've been given from the media line.
What would you say has been different in entering this program that you did not gain in a classroom scenario?
Oh my goodness, almost everything. So in the classroom, it's very cut and dry, of course. You have your what's expected of you, you have your work, and you're told what a journalist is and how a journalist operates. But when you're given the opportunity to go into the field, you get to put those things into practice. And so that's what's been the main difference for me. Actually speaking to people, and just building stories from conception to publishing, and actually being able to use my skills as a journalist and do it correctly.
Well, I think that's wonderful. I've enjoyed working with you. We hope that you are going to continue and take a second round. And not only that, it's nice to see that as of today, your face is gracing the website of the Media Line and actually telling people to promote the Press and Policy program and get involved. So many thanks. And we look forward to continuing to assist you and as well to see where you go with your career.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Programs like this are here to educate you and to help you understand the confusing Middle East and its complex nuances. The Media Line has been here for more than 2 decades, bringing trusted news and highlighting amazing women who you need to know. I encourage you to support our difficult efforts, the work of our wonderful journalists and editors, with special kudos today to some of our women editors and journalists who are joining us, and they do phenomenal work. Thank you for your excellent work. We hope you will help us make the world better for our women. Now we're going to go and take some questions on this International Women's Day. I want to thank you for all joining us on a formal level. Please empower our women. And as Nadia said, this is the decade for women.